We wanted to make sure everyone was able to vote safely, and so closing the poll was the right outcome. So with that being said, let's talk about where we are now with the extended vote by mail deadline on April 28th. Next slide, Mia.
I just want to let folks know my slide moving thing is very delicate and difficult to do, so they may jump around a little bit. And I also just wanted to encourage folks to use the chat if you have any questions, and then we'll keep those for later.
That's great, thank you. So what's the fuss about the date? You may have heard a couple election dates floating out there. June 2nd was the date that the governor and the Secretary of State initially proposed for extending the primary. And the thinking was that perhaps by June 2nd, the pandemic would have eased and it would be safer for people to have early in-person voting. And it was also thought that this would give boards of elections enough time to send out postage-paid absentee ballot applications to all Ohio voters. Now, this was just a plan because the governor and the legislature, the governor and the Secretary of State actually don't have the authority to change the date of the election. That's something that the legislature has to do. But anyway, so with this proposal of June 2nd, one of the problems was that local governments, boards of education, they were concerned that school districts needed to have time to notify teachers about staffing decisions. And they were waiting to figure out, were voters going to approve a levy or not? So that June 2nd date really wasn't ideal for those concerns. And then we were also, voting rights advocates and election officials were also shopping around this idea of perhaps a mid-May date. That would still give an opportunity for boards of elections to send out absentee ballot applications to all voters, and would be ahead of the June 2nd date, so you could have a little more lead time for school districts to be able to make their staffing decisions based on the levy. Ultimately, the mid-May date was not selected, or the June 2nd date was not selected by the legislature. The legislature had the final decision-making power there. They decided on April 28th. The idea was that they could hurry up and get an end to the primary and get some finality to that. And of course, there would not be enough time to send out absentee applications to all voters within that abbreviated timeline. And so one of the things that they thought was to send a postcard to be able to provide some sort of notification. So that is the new date, April 28th. It has its problems. We'll go into that a little bit more because of this abbreviated timeline, but I just want to make it clear that for folks that April 28th is the date we have right now. Next slide. Okay, so 197, again, that was what the legislature has passed. That is law. It says early in-person voting, I'm sorry, absentee voting or vote by mail is extended until April 28th. And the Secretary of State will be mailing voters a postcard, should be arriving next week in your mailboxes, about how to request a vote by mail application. There will be limited in-person voting at the boards of elections. That's only for folks who have disabilities, or folks who are experiencing homelessness. And then just in case anyone is confused or concerned, if you've already cast your ballot, those ballots will be counted. So you don't need to vote again if you've already voted. Next slide. Okay, so some of you may be thinking, a postcard? What's with this lousy postcard? We agree with you. We would love to have seen voters get an actual absentee ballot application because we know lots of people are at home. They may not have access to printers or postage. So we're there with you. But the legislature did not authorize the Secretary of State to mail the absentee ballot request forms. The Secretary actually wanted to do that. That's why the June 2nd date was one of the proposals. But the legislature, the lawmaker said, we don't want to go with that idea. You're not allowed to send out absentee ballot applications unless we give you the authority, and we're not giving you the authority. We're giving you the authorization to send a postcard. And so this is an extra step, an extra delay that voters are going to have to overcome And that's why we're going to need your help to try to mobilize people as quickly as possible to request absentee ballot. The next slide.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Super difficult to do that. Yeah.
Here is a picture of the postcard that you can expect to receive in your mailbox. Again, it should be coming next week. It really just sort of lays out the 3 options that you can go online to the Secretary of State site, voteohio.gov, to request an absentee ballot application. Now, you will still need to have a printer and postage to mail that in. If you don't have those things, you can call the boards of elections and they will mail you an application form. And then if for some reason you're having difficulty calling into the board, you can also just get out a piece of paper and write down the following things that is listed on this postcard: name, date of birth, etc. And you can fill out your own form, essentially, and submit that to the Board of Elections. Next slide. All right, so one last final note, just to be super clear, there is no in-person voting on April 28th. Some people may think, oh, I can go to the polls on April 28th and vote. You cannot do that. You need to request a vote by mail application. The only in-person voting will be for those who have disabilities and those who are experiencing homelessness. And those folks will have to go to the boards of elections or their early vote center to vote on April 28th. All right, that's all I have. Next slide.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Camille. I'm gonna jump in here. And a lot of this is just reiterating some of the things that Camille has already said, but this is really helpful information, not only for you to know, but for you also to share with all of your networks. There we go. Again, if you've already voted, you are fine. You do not need to re-vote, you're good. And with minor exceptions, everybody else is gonna have to vote by mail. So everybody else is gonna have to, you can't just automatically get your ballot, you have to actually send in a vote by mail application. You have to submit that application, and then you'll get the ballot. So it's a two-part process. And although you can go online and access the vote by mail application, you can't actually submit it online. What happens is you go online, you go to the website, and we'll give you all of those links. By the way, you will get a copy of these slides. We're gonna email them to you after this is over. So you're gonna get all this information. You'll have all the links. You'll have all the information to share. But if you are trying to get an absentee ballot application and you go online, you can fill out the form partially online, but you still have to print it, sign it, and date it, and get it to your Board of Elections, either by dropping it off or by mail. So there's no part of this process that can be entirely done online. Just want to be super clear about that. Okay, so these are your options. Again, we've gone through some of these things. You can go to the Secretary of State's website, voteohio.gov, and you can go to the place where they have the absentee ballot application. You partially fill it out, then you print it, you sign a date, and then you either mail it or drop it off. Or you can call your Board of Elections and ask them to send you that application. Some of the boards of elections have special phone trees where you can do that kind of through an automated process online. There may be some long wait times. We have a directory here with all of the phone numbers for the boards of elections. Of course, you can also just Google and find it there. But you know, that is another option, is just going ahead and calling your Board of Elections. Again, they're not going to send you your ballot. They're going to send you that absentee ballot application form. And then you're going to fill out that application and you're going to get it to the Board of Elections. You may also be able to find an absentee ballot application somewhere in your community. They're printing them in the Dayton newspaper. There may be a stack at Kroger. They're doing that in Hamilton County now, and we hope they're going to do that in other counties as well. You know, your church may have a stack there. There may be some people who have put some on their porch and are sharing them with neighbors. So, you know, and you can join in that as well. You can join in and you can have a stack on your porch. Everyone can participate in trying to spread out these absentee ballot applications. There's more than 7 million Ohioans who have not yet participated in this election, and we're very much hoping that they do get a chance to participate, but they can't participate unless they have access to that vote by mail application. All right, so if you have a printer, that's sweet. Excellent, but really very few people do nowadays. So if you don't have a printer, don't worry. You can take a piece of paper and you can basically write out all the information that you would have written down on your application. And it's quite a long list. Again, that postcard is going to tell you what you need to include. But it's the same things that are on the application. So if you went online and you went to the site where you see the absentee ballot application, you could just basically put all the information there that you see. You can write that on a piece of paper. You could also go and collect a form from your Board of Elections. Again, so that's an easy way to do it. You can call first and see if they have those available. Not only do you not need a printer, you don't necessarily need a stamp. I know that's another thing that people may not have. So once you've filled out your vote by mail application or you've written down the information on a piece of paper, you can actually drop it off at the Board of Elections. A lot of boards have a Dropbox. Some of them are still setting them up. Some of them have a system where you go to their parking lot and you call them, and then they come out and meet you and take the form. So it's a little bit different in every county. You can try to call your county first and ask, but certainly in the more populous counties, Hamilton, Franklin, Cuyahoga, et cetera, they do have drop boxes and you are able to drop them off there. And once you've turned in your application for a ballot and you are mailed your ballot and you receive it, that is going to come with a postage paid return envelope. So you should be able to do this whole process without a stamp. Okay, sorry, just want to check. Okay, now one last thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jen Miller. We really want to make sure that folks fill out this absentee ballot application correctly the first time, because with this very short timeline, by the time you've gotten through to the Board of Elections and they've mailed you the application, you fill it out, you mail it back, we're going to be getting down towards that deadline of, you know, when you can possibly get your ballot back in. What we don't want is that you fill out the application incorrectly and then they have to mail it back to you and you have to do it a second time. So again, you'll have a link to this slideshow. You'll be able to see this image, and it has some of the common errors. The first one is that folks sometimes put today's date instead of their birth date. So up at the top there, after you've put your name, you put your own birth date. And in line 3, the address, that's the address where you're registered to vote. We'll talk later about what happens if you've moved, but what you're looking to put in line 3 is the address that the Board of Elections has on file for you, you know, the one where you're registered to vote. And that's where your ballot is going to be sent, unless you fill out number 4, which is where you currently are, where you need that ballot sent, which, you know, might be different from number 3. Let's say you're a student and you registered at school, but now you're at home. 4 is where the ballot would be sent. In section 6, for the primary, we have to check primary, that it's a primary election. And then for the date of the election, honestly, you can use any of the 3 dates that have been set for this election so far. March 17th, April 28th, or June 2nd, they will all be accepted. Now for a primary, of course, we do need to either choose to get a ballot for a political party, in which case you check that box political party ballot and you put the name of the party that you want, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or you can get an issues only ballot. So you're going to check one of those down there. And then very last thing, don't forget to sign and date. and then you either mail or drop it off. All right, I'm going to turn over to Jen. There we go.
All right, so it's so important to make sure that your vote counts. There's a super tight timeline. And let's keep in mind that boards of elections and the mail service are also operating under pandemic conditions. And that makes it harder for them. So we want to make sure that you do everything you can to have your vote counted. So act today. Request that absentee ballot today, and then your absentee ballot itself has to be returned. So you want to request your absentee ballot today through your application. Can you back up there? I know you're having trouble. And then, but your ballot itself needs to be postmarked on the 27th, or you can turn it in by hand to your county board of election on the 28th. Any ballots that are postmarked by April 27th and received by May 8th will be counted. But one of the most important things you need to do is help others know to act right away, not to wait till the last minute. Now I think we can change slides.
Sorry. There we go.
All right, so some things you can do to get ready to vote. You know, there is a lot of information on the Secretary of State's site. You can find your sample ballot by going there. You also can research candidates at the League of Women Voters nonpartisan website, vote411.org. You can put your address in. You have to select your party and put your address in, and then it will give you a sample ballot, and you can choose, look at the candidates, the pro and cons of issues. And then judicialvotescount.org is a critical site. We are always wanting to make sure that our voters cast their votes throughout the entire ballot, including for judicial races. The League works on this along with many other allies and partners. It helps you understand the candidates on your ballot for judge, but it also tells you a little bit more about the judicial system. All right. All right, let's see. Oh, not me now?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, all right, students. It's so hard for students. And so if you have students in your life, I would absolutely check in on them and make sure that they know how to navigate this. It's very, very possible that that postcard is going to go to their school address, and that's not where they are right now. So you're going to want to, so for example, a great example, someone who lives at an OSU dorm but is at home in Lima still needs to call that Franklin County Board of Election, the board where they are registered, to get their absentee ballot. Students are going to want to jump on this even faster, especially if they live in other states. But again, students call the county where they are registered to vote, and it's good to check on them because they may not get that postcard at all. And so it's good for them to make sure they know that the dates have changed and that they need to apply for a ballot. You can track your ballot at this link. You cannot track your application. And a lot of people are waiting for their application right now. The boards could not mail out, I mean, a lot of people are waiting for their ballots right now who have turned in their applications. Boards could not mail out the ballots until Monday at the earliest, but a lot of boards are still struggling with that turnaround. It may take a while for you to get your ballot. You may want to call if you have turned in your application and haven't heard anything. But also, once you get your ballot, you can track that. You can see when it's on its way to you. You can see when it's when you return it. Make sure it counts. Sorry, I wasn't terribly clear on that. What else do we got?
Sorry.
Oh, and what if we moved?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a really important one, and this is part of the reason why the League has a lawsuit. So you have to put in your correct new address where it says address at which you're registered to vote. You have to put in the address that you live at currently. You will get an absentee provisional ballot. We still want you, you know, it's illegal to put your old address in that line. You have to put in your new address. You will still be able to vote. You'll just have a provisional absentee ballot.
Great, thank you so much, Jen. Now we're going to go over to Camille, and she's going to tell us how to get involved.
Excellent. So this is the super exciting part. There are a lot of ways that folks can get involved, and some of them are super simple and easy, and you can do with just a few clicks from your computer. The first is by helping to share all of this information on social media. We've got lots of graphics, and we're continuing to put more graphics into a Google folder, which is linked here under the primary 2020 images. Don't worry if you don't have a pen to jot that down. We're going to send these slides out with the link, but there'll be a folder with lots of great images letting people know about the important dates and ways to request ballots. Next slide. Here's just another sample.
I don't think I skipped one. Okay, there we go.
And another sample. This one's what the Ohio Women's Alliance has put out. So just, there will be many images that you can grab that you'll like and that will speak to you. Go ahead, next slide. So the idea is just to help us spread the word, put this out so that your networks also get this information. Another idea is to think about putting these things in a plug in a newsletter, a blurb in a newsletter, or emails that go out. If you are doing calls with your members or meetings, virtual meetings where you're updating folks about the primary, we will be putting out FAQs so that you can distribute those with those most frequently asked questions about the election. But if you wanted someone to go a little bit more in depth, I'm sure many of the folks that are on this call that are presenting on this call would be happy to do a quick call with some of your members. So just email us and let us know. Next slide. Social media wise, lots of our organizations are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. If you just want to go ahead and follow those groups, you can easily get the most up-to-date information and just click like and share. And that's a super simple way of spreading the word. Next slide. And last but not least for me is we are looking for folks to help sign up to tell their story. We're looking for new voices to help us get into the media so that folks have an idea about why voting is important to you, what barriers you may have experienced with this election or other elections that may be relevant. Thinking about why some of these reforms are really important to you, especially considering the importance of the November election. So just thinking about if you or someone might have a story that they wanted to share, be willing to send in a letter to the editor or an op-ed, or even to do radio or TV, you can just simply fill out this form and we will follow up with you and give you the support you need to make sure that we get your story out there.
Awesome, thank you. And if anyone has a photograph of their, let's say they're going to put absentee ballot applications in their little free library, or they're going to hang them from the bird feeder or whatever it is, we'd love to see pictures of that as well. So I just want to tell you about a very exciting thing that we're doing starting tomorrow. We are going to have a texting campaign. Like I said, there's more than 7 million Ohioans who have not yet had an opportunity to cast a ballot in this election, and we would like to reach as many of them as possible. 7 million is not going to be possible, but we have set ourselves an extremely ambitious, exciting goal of 1 million voters. We would like to reach 1 million voters by text, but we can only do that with your help. And if you have been waiting to do your first texting, this is a great time to get involved with the texting campaign. The Ohio Organizing Collaborative has set up a GOTV program for the Ohio primary, and it's open to anybody, individuals, organizations, volunteer groups, activist groups, and basically you're going to sign up to be a part of the campaign. You download the app, which is Outvote, and then you do a training. And we have 3 trainings already set up. There's one tomorrow at 11. I'm going to jump on that one. There's one on Monday and there's one on Wednesday. And the reason we're doing them, so quickly is that obviously if we're asking folks to apply for an absentee ballot, they need to do it right away. So if we're going to text them, we need to start texting them right away. So after this webinar is over, you're going to get a couple of emails. You're going to get a summary from us and links to the slides and all that. And then you're also going to get a letter from the Ohio Organizing Collaborative with absolutely all the information that you need in order to join this program. And it's something that you can literally just forward and send to all of your members. And if you can share this on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere that you are active, we want to try to hit that 1 million. And it's something that folks can do at home. It's very easy. You do it from either your phone or your laptop. And it's really a great opportunity. And we're very thankful to OOC for setting it up so quickly in these rather strange circumstances. And I'm going to pass back to Jen.
All right. So I also just wanted to mention you'll be getting a flyer that the league created. If you're not a texter, but you have a printer and you're someone who walks, you'll be getting a flyer. There's 2-to-1 sheets, just because we tried to make it 4-to-1 sheet, but there's just way too many steps for that. That you could maybe hang in different places around your neighborhood or your community that explains the process to everyone. We mentioned the possibility of lawsuits. Definitely that has now occurred. Actually, the league and A. Philip Randolph, along with ACLU Ohio, DEMOS, and the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, has filed a lawsuit. And here's the thing, we're going to still encourage everyone to get their absentee ballot right away, to do their research and turn that ballot in right away. No matter what goes forward in terms of the lawsuit, the best way, and maybe the only way that people are going to be able to vote, is by mail. But we have just a lot of concerns about needing for individuals, especially if you don't live in the county seat. You have to pay for postage for your application. The ballot has prepaid postage, but not the application. Similarly, the very tight timeline is impossible for boards of elections, but it's also really hard for voters. And so we do not want to let this go by without challenging it on access issues. So just stay tuned on that. Dates could change again, and that is unfortunate, but hopefully that date would make it easier for voters. In the meantime, keep educating them to participate by mail. Do we have anything else?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. And we also are tracking and working directly with voters every day in the field. We want every voter to be able to vote. We know our democracy works best when we can all participate. And so that is our bit link here. If you know someone who has been denied the ability to vote, they have questions, they have problems, please click on that. We will follow up with you personally. And that also helps us better understand when we're advocating in the courts and at the legislature for reforms.
All right, we have come to the end of the slideshow, and we now have an opportunity for questions. So panelists, I unmuted you, Catherine and Prentice, and I'm gonna unmute Mike here. So Catherine, I think there have been a lot of questions. Thank you guys, you are a wonderful audience. You've been jumping in with lots of important points. And Catherine's gonna take it from here.
Hey everybody. So one of the questions that was asked was, how many people are actually doing this webinar with me? So there are 166 participants that are doing this webinar. And I just wanted to say, I'm so glad that we're all together to do this. So I'm going to go through some questions, and I'm hoping that Mike and Prentice can help answer, and Jen jump in, Mia jump in if you need to be. So the first question is, does the election date entered have to be 4/25, 6/2? What's acceptable?
I'm
Yeah.
going to answer. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I can answer that. So for the absentee ballot application, the law that was passed by the Ohio General Assembly says that your absentee ballot application cannot be rejected on the sole basis of whatever date you put on there for the date of the election. So if you put March 17th, or if you put April 28th, or if you put June 2nd, or frankly, if you put any date out there, if that's the only thing that might be incorrect or, you know, faulty on your absentee ballot application, it will not be rejected. The official position is you're supposed to put March 17th, 2020. But again, if you put a different date, your absentee ballot application will not be rejected.
All right, well, Constance Rubin said, are the Secretary of State and Governor being lobbied to mention voting by mail every day? They have those COVID-19 press briefings. Could we all help by encouraging such action at together@governor.ohio.gov?
I love it, Courtney Rubin. I think we have asked that, but I think it's really great if everyday Ohioans not associated with organizations, even though you are, of course, a Star League member, to go ahead and advocate there too.
Yeah, I actually think this would be a really interesting campaign, and it is the kind of information that people need, and it's something proactive that folks can do, and a lot of what we're doing is sitting, so it's good to have something like this we can proactively do. Okay, so this is from Mindy Hedges. She wants to know about what's the process for security and voting. I'm very concerned that steps will be not taken to count votes properly, she's concerned that it's dependent on Board of Election officials, etc. And I'm paraphrasing there. Mike, is that something you want to answer?
Sure. So, you know, the normal precautions that are in place for ballot security as of right now are still in place. So, you know, typically when votes are counted, you know, boards of elections operate on a bipartisan basis. So there always have to be, you know, Republicans and Democrats handling ballots. When they're counted, usually political parties and campaigns may have a witness there to watch. There has not been additional guidance yet that I've seen from the Secretary of State about how to handle that with COVID-19, but I suspect that there will likely be some provisions put in place to allow for social distancing while also being able to monitor that counting process. And then after those ballots are counted, you know, typically boards of elections will meet and go over, you know, the quote unquote problem ballots, you know, the ballots that maybe came in late or are unreadable for whatever reason or have a minor defect on them. And they will usually vote on whether or not to accept or reject those ballots. Those would fall under, you know, the legislature in their bill that they passed some changes to public meetings laws that do allow, if there is a meeting of a public entity like the Board of Elections, that they need to provide some sort of option for the public to be able to participate, whether that's telephonically or through a video conference or something like that. And so boards of elections should be doing that for those types of meetings where they're making decisions on ballots.
So, and I think the live streaming, for example, of the audits is something that Board of Elections are trying to figure out. It's just some of that stuff, because they've been scrambling, has not yet been figured out. I did receive a question about, you know, are they going to be live streaming many of the different processes that you normally would be able to see in public? They're in the, you know, boards of elections are in the processes of trying to figure that out, and we should have more information very soon. I'm going to see, so there were a number of questions where people were concerned about it seeming as if there was an electronic application form, but there's just a fillable PDF, which needs to be printed for the application. So, and I think, you know, that's one of the things just to highlight to people, that it is not something that we can do online. Online, we can get the application and print it, but it's not the same as being able to actually apply online. And Mike, anything you want to add about that, or Prentice?
Jen wants to add something.
Oh, Jen, please.
So on April 16th, we will have our State House Day. and we will learn about different issues and then take action. And one of the sessions will be about being ready for the November election, and actually requesting absentee ballots online will be one of those items. So right now, no, you cannot do it. This is something that all of us have been advocating for a long time. Maybe in the midst of this pandemic, lawmakers will listen to us. So join us on April 16th.
Here is a question. Is the Ohio government going to do a campaign, TV, social media to help people understand the process? What kind of education are people going to be getting from government?
So go ahead.
I think that's a really great question. I want to connect that with the idea that somebody had earlier about bringing this up at the daily briefings that the governor and the secretary of state have. You know, I've seen some really effective advocacy organizations even use social media to, you know, tweet at or Facebook or email at reporters to ask those questions, because I think that that's a really, really important point. You know, the rules set out for this election are not the easiest for voters, but also there's just been a high level of voter confusion. We've had 3 different dates thus far for the election. People aren't sure what the rules are. People haven't used vote by mail before. This is a time for our government to step up and to actually put some finances behind voter education. And they should be doing that now. But I think that we should be pushing media and pushing our elected officials to be asking this question, what they're doing now, but also what are they going to do for the general election too?
We have had a number of questions about whether people will be able to drop their ballots off at the Board of Elections, specifically on the 28th, but also throughout May until the 28th.
Throughout April.
That's correct, through April. I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly. So basically, can people from, you know, April 3rd of today through April 28th drop their ballots off at the Board of Elections?
So many boards of elections are closed to the public right now because of the COVID-19 concerns, but all of them should have drop boxes at their offices where you can securely drop off your ballot if you would like to do that. So in Cuyahoga County, we have that, and I believe in most other counties that they have those out there, and that's an option for you to drop them off before the 28th.
Yeah, we do have a spreadsheet that Karen Watkins and Sue Dyke put together that basically has all the different things that are happening at the Board of Elections, and every Board of Elections is slightly different. But they, you know, for example, in Franklin County, you can both pick up and drop off. There's like a vestibule and there's a safe drop-off area that they've created as well. But it differs for different counties. We'll make sure that you actually have that spreadsheet so you can look and see what's going on in your county. And if you have more questions, you can give them a phone call about that. Let's see. The next question is, sorry about this, everyone. So one of the things that was wonderful in the question areas that we received were people's ideas about the kinds of things that they wanted to do. And so people were thinking about, like, well, what about having the ballots at pharmacies and grocery stores and post office and food banks? What do y'all think about that?
Sounds great.
We love it.
We also have a little library suggestion.
Excellent.
So here is actually, I think, a hard question to answer. Do you have any idea the turnaround time for ballot applications?
Right, so that's hard. So they could not send out any of the ballots until they got the directive from the Secretary of State, which came on Friday. So this week, boards of elections are processing those applications and sending out ballots for those that have already come in. But let's remember that it's 3 to 5 days mail in non-pandemic conditions. So you may have to wait a little while. You can try to get on the ballot tracking and see if, you know, every couple days and see if your ballot is on there where it says that they've sent the application out to you. You can call your Board of Elections to check on it, but it is 3 to 5 days one way. So the turnaround, it will be different for each county, and it's not super swift because we have a very clunky system that we're trying to operate for large numbers of people.
It's also true that some of the employees at the boards of elections are not necessarily working at the office because of the pandemic. And so, you know, that is complicating things as well.
So we have a question about somebody who has a 17-year-old and wants to, you know, vote in this primary as the person's turning 18 by the November election. You know, basically they wanted to know it's the same as filling out a regular application where you would just ask for an issues ballot. If you want an issued ballot, you'd ask for a Democratic ballot, or Republican ballot, or a Libertarian ballot. Anything additions that people want to add for young people, or just to provide a little more information?
I'll just say that, sorry, go ahead, Mike. Or,
no, I was gonna say, just reiterate what we said earlier for the hundreds of thousands of young people who went home because of their the dorms and universities have been shut down. Just making sure that they know that they can still vote, and they need to request a absentee ballot form to come to the mailing address where they're staying, but it has to come from the county in which they're registered to vote at. So just making sure that we communicate that, and we'll have FAQs to make sure people know how to communicate that to young people.
And I just add really quick that that 17-year-old issue, that happens automatically. At the Board of Elections will issue the correct ballot for that person. So it will just have the, you know, choosing between candidates who are going to be on the ballot in November. It won't include the things that are going to be finally decided in that election. But that's not something that you need to flag or do anything about yourself personally. That will automatically happen from your Board of Elections.
This is another one. Can you please repeat how many people have not yet voted in this primary?
Yeah, nearly 7 million, right? I mean, that's
7 million.
Over
It's amazing.
7 million, yes.
Of course, not everybody always votes in a primary, so we wouldn't expect all 7 million to vote, but certainly a lot of them would.
So about 500,000 people have already cast ballots, but we really have been an election day state. So we are over 7 million people have not yet had that ability. And Mia is correct that a lot of people won't, may not have anyway, but we could see even fewer people participating because of all this confusion, which is why we are so glad all of you are on with us today.
We have a question here about, is it okay to share the slides widely?
Absolutely.
See, that was an easy one. Okay, so Kathleen Bradley noted that the Lieutenant Governor says that March 17th is the primary date, even though there's extended voting. Is this confusing?
Yes. The main reason why they're saying that is so that they don't have to update registrations, in my opinion. This is Jen with the league. And that's part of our lawsuit, is that the NVRA, the National Voter Rights Registration Act, as well as the Ohio Constitution, require registration within 30 days of the election date. So they're calling it an extension to try to skirt around this registration issue.
And I think for the confusing aspect is it's confusing for voters when you're filling out your absentee ballot application that you're asking for a ballot for an election that was March 17th, which should have already happened. And so it feels weird to put, you know, today's date down at the bottom when you sign it, but then see that the election was actually in the past. Again, don't worry about that date, whatever date you put in there. Your ballot application will go through so long as you don't have any other kind of error. But yeah, it is confusing, and unfortunately that's just kind of where we are right now.
Here's another one. It's a shout out to Judge for Yourself. If you are in Cuyahoga County, Judge for Yourself is a wonderful website that provides good information on judges. Just wanted to highlight that. Let's see. The other thing that, this is from Iris Meltzer, that she really wanted to highlight is that it is one thing to provide the absentee ballot applications to folks, but it becomes illegal to actually provide postage. And so we need to be very clear that we, for example, can help people get those applications in a very careful way, but that unfortunately it is considered providing something of value to a voter. So we want to be really clear that it is okay to put applications in your little library and all the different ways that we're talking about, but that in fact the postage it is unfortunately illegal. Mike or Jen, do you want to add anything to that?
No, and just to say, I've been getting this question a lot. Even if you're a nonprofit, even if you're a church, even if you have nothing to do with a candidate or a campaign or a party, unfortunately, it is illegal to give an individual postage stamp to send in their application. And you should just know that's part of our case. But in the meantime, we just need to help people navigate the system as best we can.
The good news is that the postage on your return envelope for your actual ballot is postage paid. So you will not need a stamp for the ballot, just for the actual application.
All right, so the next question goes to Prentice. What are the dates on the trainings?
Yes, so we have 3 upcoming trainings. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. to noon, Monday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. and then Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. This is all going to be emailed out. These trainings are going to help you learn how to use Outvote, contact through a peer-to-peer texting app on how to contact thousands of Ohio voters. It'll also allow you to contact your friends and family. And so we're going to make sure we can reach as many people we need to during this time. And so one other thing I want to add in that, actually to a point earlier around Judge Yourself and voter guides, this is absolutely a time to continue to send out voter guides and educating voters on who's on the ballot, different issues on the ballot. So I know the league and other folks, people in Cleveland have created voter guides. It's a great time to keep pushing that out so people remember why this election is so important.
All right, so here's another one, and this is from Bill Davis. He says, some people have stated that absentee voting is open to fraud. Where are they getting that? Is it right-wing media? Is it a disinformation campaign? Is this a real problem?
So I think it's the same answer as whenever, fraud comes up in other contexts in voting, is that, it's very limited, right? That there are very few cases of voter fraud out there, that we have systems in place to ensure that our vote by mail system and our, voting in person systems are protected. And, we find that these kinds of cases are very few and far between. And so, it's oftentimes much ado about nothing. If we're looking at the real problem, I think, in our system, it's that not enough people vote. As we mentioned earlier, we have 7 million plus people who still have to vote here in the state of Ohio, and we've created a system that makes it extremely impossible for all of those people to be able to cast their ballot that they're eligible to vote on. So again, I think just like any other story about inaccuracies or things in the voting system, there's not a lot of truth behind it, that it's very few and far between, and that the real issue here is making sure that we have a system that's accessible for everybody.
Now I have a kind of complicated question for Prentice. How are you cutting the list for the texting campaign?
Oh yeah, it's actually simple. So the texting campaign is in 2 phases, the request phase and then the chase phase. So from now until about midway through April, we're going to focus on requesting, like vote by mail, like helping voters to request their vote by mail application, filling it out, and then mailing it in. And so the targets inside of that list, in that universe, are low propensity voters in Franklin County, Cuyahoga County, Montgomery, Hamilton, and Summit. And the reason why we are choosing to focus on those voters is that those voters, a lot of them are likely never have voted by mail at all. And we want to help support them in learning the process and getting more people to actually request their ballots. And then midway through April, we're going to switch to a Chase program. So every Ohio voter who actually has a ballot at home but has not turned it in, we are going to contact them to get that in before the deadline.
All right, so our next question is about the homeless. Are there any plans to help the homeless population vote?
So really important point, you know, we talked about how this is a mostly all vote by mail election, except for, you know, voters with certain disabilities, but then also people who cannot receive mail at the place where they are registered to vote. And that really impacts a lot of our homeless voters. You know, Ohio law says that you can be registered to vote at the park bench over across the street if that is where you actually live. So that is a good way to help enfranchise homeless voters. So folks who are homeless or otherwise unable to receive mail at their registered voter address, they will be able to vote in person at the Board of Elections on April 28th. Voting starts from 6:30 a.m. and lasts until 7:30 p.m. And I know that oftentimes local advocacy groups that work with homeless populations do rides to the polls from a lot of the homeless shelters. I know that there are several groups that really focus on homeless voters. And so if you're interested in, you know, helping to support that or to helping to organize that, certainly contact the folks that helped organize this call, and I'm sure we can get you in contact with those local groups.
All right, here's another question. Are the larger universities being encouraged to notify their students about absentee ballots?
I jumped in and answered that one because I think they are, but the trouble is, and you know, they'll be sending out information by email. I know that OSU has, but in the rush to leave campuses, a lot of universities were unable to collect forwarding addresses for all their students. So they don't, you know, they may be able to send them an email, but they won't necessarily be able to forward them information. So I think they're doing what they can, but we should still be, you know, trying to spread information as well.
Yeah, and then additionally, a lot of students who are going home, if they don't live in state or are in different places, a lot of students are actually not at the location that they have their forwarding address because of shelter-in-place ordinances. They're with other families or other places in the country. So I think the biggest thing that we should do while encouraging universities to notify their students is to also contact them through these texting programs to make sure they know.
Sue Dyke would like to suggest that people provide information through Nextdoor. So if you use Nextdoor, and I think we got used to Facebook and Twitter, but I think that that's a great suggestion. Douglas Robinson has a question. Do we think that the November 2020 election will also be a mail-in election? Also, can we get automatic voter registration in Ohio?
Well, I'm not supposed to be part of the question and answer, but I gotta say I like you, Douglas. So April 16th for our State House Day, which is an annual event we're doing digitally. One of the sessions will be on automatic voter registration and how to advocate for that. We'll have experts. So we should have a registration link up, but I'll share it with Mia so she can share with everyone, or Camille. Secondly, you know, November might be, but even if it's not an officially all vote by mail election, we might be encouraging people to vote absentee And so I think that's another reason to be pushing for reforms today so that the system works better. And so we kind of, just like we basically need to be advocating for long-term reforms or medium-term for the November election at the same time that we're helping voters. And so please join us in that task. April 16th, we'll kick that off.
And then we had a question about, can you sell a stamp to a voter to help them? And so the answer to that is yes, you can. The other thing to remember is that people can pick up stamps. You can purchase stamps at the grocery store. And so, many of us are giving people quite a wide berth, knowing that when they make that trip out to the grocery store, they can also pick up a stamp there. So I think we've hit all of the questions. I'm going to go back. I'm basically working in a doc here. It'll take me just a second. I think we've hit all of our questions, and we're a little bit after 1 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you all for this. Are there things that any of the panelists want to add, as we say goodbye? Y'all are going to be getting an email from us with additional information. You're going to be receiving information about the texting program. And so we just really appreciate you all getting together with us to talk about how to make this primary as workable as possible. Do panelists have any final words they'd like to offer?
Just thank you to everybody for coming on and for helping spread the word about how to participate in this election.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.